The Tamer is Repulsive. Level 20. The War Under the Mountains. 8. Deep inside the keep, it was a scene out of a fantasy war movie. Dust and the occasional rock or two fell down from the high ceilings, and the chandeliers swayed with each impact that shook the massive stone structure. The keep had been made of a method brought to the dwarves by the hero gods who had saved them. A mixture of mortar, random stones, pottery shards, and more were formed around a mesh of woven metal rods. The hero gods called it reinforced concrete, and it had served as the ultimate building material for ages. It was only the most vulnerable structures that would be made of this, then lovingly masked with other types of stone and further covered in runes, statues, and other decorative pieces. It was said that a keep made of reinforced concrete was unassailable, that even if the exterior decorations were blown away, the material of the hero gods would remain unscathed. The runes inscribed on the random stones and shards of earthwork that were embedded within the mixture would protect from anything, or so was said. And yet, this did not seem to be anything remotely close to the truth. The rag-cloaked five-horned monster leveled blast after blast of entropic lightning and emerald flame at the walls of the keep, and with each strike, the structure shook from the impact. Each strike carved out not only the decorations and facade, but also chunks of the inner material as well. Even as the defenders tried to fire bolts and bullets at the rat monster, the creature just stood there and ignored the rounds that disintegrated before even reaching it. Seemingly bored of using its free hand to heft its magical projectiles, the towering monstrosity lifted its staff high above itself and then rammed it down to the ground. A glowing green fissure formed from where the staff impacted and formed an erratic zigzag line across the surface, quickly climbing up the wall of the keep and stopping just shy of the roof. From that point, yet more fissures branched out from the main one like a glowing, leafless tree of destruction. With barely 5 seconds having passed since the spell began, the fissures expanded, and the wall came tumbling down. An entire side of the keep was now open to the outside, and if that was not bad enough, the fissures had also spread inside as well, causing entire rooms to collapse and condemn dozens of dwarves to death by various means. However, while the massive gash in the keep was indeed a huge branch in the defensiveness of the structure, the rattan forces were still preoccupied with dealing with a stubborn dwarven resistance. If the towering cloaked horn rat person would be content to simply chuck spells at them from a distance, Glider the Ninth thought then maybe they could devise a way to... Before he could finish his thought, a pair of figures appeared in the command center, one of them familiar and the other not so much. Morgrim No-Beard was now on the back foot against the human-sized rattan female he was fighting. As the royal guards rushed to aid their fellow dwarf, Morgrim took the opportunity their sacrifice provided him to chug a few health and stamina potions. The royal guards were easily dispatched by the rattan assassin, who wore an outfit made of faces, which did not surprise Morgrim in the least.
Fucking mobs! Seems even elite mobs like these ones are still just trash at best!
With a derisive sneer, Morgrim waited for his cooldowns to finish before slinking off into the shadows.
Morgrim, what are you doing? Help them! You are a hero god, are you not? Save your people from distractions like the days of legends!
Glider cried out, trying to bring dwarfkind's last hope to bear. Instead, all he heard was mocking laughter and words that chilled him to the bone.
Why should I? Fighting them was suicidal. Why else do you think I didn't go with my guild to try and face them? Sure, I felt guilty for a bit after they died and all and didn't res. But why should I die in a pointless waste to buy this doomed civilization a bit more time on the clock? You didn't bother to check their levels, did you? When I started fighting Face Stealer, I didn't think it would be a problem. I mean, I could solo it in the game. But this? Well, take this. My final present to a doomed man. Have to say, it was fun playing this game, but I'm not about to get permanent game over just yet. Ciao, Glider. Tell my old buddies that I said hi.
A monocle dropped down from above and landed squarely in between the gaps of Gilder's helmet. His vision blurred for a moment, but then he saw things far more clearly. Everyone in the room had both their levels and their names visible for him to see. His gaze followed one person after the next before he opened his own stats to see his own level. He was stronger than all of them, yes. All save the rude assassin that was carving his people to shreds. His level was over 200. Hers level was simply put as unknown. From what he knew about levels, he knew that he was fucked. In the world that Morgrim had come from, that designation meant that a being was over 50 to 100 levels above you. In this world, Morgrim had determined that it meant that your foe was over 500 levels above you. Unbeknownst to Gilder the Ninth, Morgrim had been played like a fiddle, toyed around with by a force far beyond his meager level of 967. When he finally had bothered to check Squeak's level, he realized how deep a hole he was in and wisely decided to flee, even if it meant that the legacy of his guildmates would be lost to that group of raid bosses he should have been able to wipe single-handedly. "Your Highness!" Gilder was shaken out of his mix of abject terror, disbelief, and despair by one of his advisors. "Your Highness, you must flee! Take the express line, it will—" One of the lines blew apart, and a massive skull-like mutated rat head took the advisor in its jaws and proceeded to crush and eat him, even as he screamed bloody murder. If that wasn't bad enough, another wall was broken down as a huge mechanical rat centaur thing wielding chainsaw-tipped warglaives busted in like a goddamn Kool-Aid man. From the back of said mechanical monstrosity jumped a rattan female that stood high above him, clad in a shiny, albeit blood and bile-covered suit of spiked armor of twin falchions at her hips. Said armored rat woman was princess-carrying another rattan female similar size to her. Once she landed, she dropped the rat woman in her arms to the ground, who then proceeded to pull a tiara from her head and cuss out that one that dropped her. There were now 4 dangerously nasty female rat people occupying his command center, but their bickering turned to silence as the tapping of a staff echoed through the now deathly quiet keep. The tapping seemed both far away and dangerously close, and every time it grew louder, the pressure and sense of dread in the air heavier. The tapping stopped, and Gilder realized that it had been coming from behind the massive of the doors that should have been blocked to the suit. The doors blew off their hinges and flew through the air, barely missing both the hideous abomination of flesh and bone and the ungodly machine next to it. In the opening where the doors once stood was a female rattan. She was. Gilder smacked himself in the crotch to keep himself sane. There was no way in hell he was going to fall for a fucking rat, even with its massive bust and womanly curves and sultry walk. He smacked himself again and again, not to the visible disgust of the 5-clawed paw. The horned rattan female walked up to the self-harming Gilder and gave him a kick to the face, dislodging the monocle and sending him reeling. A commanding feminine voice that did not sound anything similar to the normal speech patterns of rattan boomed out for the one who kicked him. "Seriously, you find us attractive? Are you really that? Wait, now I see the reason for your lustful gaze. Let me fix that. No one but our vermin king was meant to see that, so you and your kin should bear witness to the truth. In all honesty, he would have despised us if he saw us without this glamour. Now gaze upon us and tremble, brat." His gaze was once again fell on the leader of the rattan race, but now he saw something truly horrific. Each one of the rattan females was shifting between what they had looked like mere moments earlier and their true forms. The sight that Vale and so many dwarves had borne witness to was not the truth. The 5-clawed paw had long since grown to be able to use glamour spells to hide their appearances, and the dwarf king now saw what Vale had not, but the rattan did. His eyes filled with a mixture of horror, disgust, despair, and dread as the utterly monstrous creatures in front of him approached. Their faces were once something that only a certain type of people would find hot, but now they looked like something out of a horror movie. There were no breasts of any great size, no feminine curves, no attractive and sultry movements, just monsters preparing to pounce on their prey. Gilder's thoughts raced as his mind began to enter panic mode. There was no way something that hideous, that disgusting could possibly exist. The stench, the matter, mangy fur and skin covered in... Oh, by the ancestors and hero gods, what was he seeing? They should not be. They could not be. This was... Gilder the Knife fainted as they drew too near, his mind unable to process the sheer hideousness of what was in front of him. The leader of the Five-Claw Paw, Chew Snowfur, reached out with her gnarled and mangy arm and grasped the Dwarf King in her twisted, bony fingers. Gilder the Knife's eyes shifted under his closed lid before his eyes opened wide and glowed a sickening green. Emerald wisps of mist flowed from Gilder's eyes, ears, nose, and mouth and fused into the matted and mangy fur-covered flesh of the Vermin Queen. Every memory and thought that filled the dwarf was being gobbled up by a ravenous monstrosity that had held him in its grasp. After what seemed like hours, the towering and hideous rat-woman crushed the head of her prey and swallowed the soul of the last king of the Ironheart Kingdom. Gilder the Knife's body fell to the ground with a thud, and his fluids spilled out from the shatterments of his head.
Was he here?
The raspy and twisted voice from Snickety asked. No, this one did not know anything. A useless beard thing rolling over yet more useless beard things. To not even know of something so momentous. Disappointing. The Vermin Queen hissed in anger as she contemplated which dwarven kingdom would have her beloved in its clutches. She was sure that it had to be one of the ones farther away. It was what she would do. Keep the prize as far away as possible to buy time for... something. She kicked the dead man as if he could feel the pain, and then cast a spell to deal with the mess. She had already taken the impotent king's family alive and unharmed, but that would not be for long. She had plans for the royal family, and they would be given the same treatment as their patriarch in the end. Of course, she intended for them to be alive as it happened. A portal appeared under the fallen monarch and whisked him away to a fate that was unbefitting of his stature. The 5 monsters licked their lips in anticipation of what was to come. After all, it wasn't every day they got to eat royalty, both dead and alive.